listening to AchieveRadio.com. A new drummer for a new awakening.
Across the realms and around the world, welcome to Outside the Box. Tonight, your host and vessel of spirit is Nancy Zilversmit. We hope that you will learn to have the strength and courage to step outside the box and dwell with spirit, and to leave the old beliefs that hold you down behind you and rediscover your spirituality in new ways. Hello, it's July 15th, 2015, and this show is brought to you by www.sanctuaryofsacredspace.com. Upcoming events, we have tarot class still on Tuesday nights, 6:30 p.m. if you care to join us. If you have any previous background or would just like to brush up on your major arcana, that is what we are doing with the tarot class. You can either call me or text me at 602-380-1171. Catch me on Facebook, Nancy Zilversmit, and tell me if you are wishing to attend either in person or via Skype. There is a minor cost for the class, and you can get that information when you contact me. Okay, in the news, we have a lot of things going on in the news this week, and I was just sitting here reading through one piece that it's a show that I like to watch. It's in hiatus right now until the new season starts. It's called The Walking Dead, and it seems that there have been researchers studying the first 3 seasons of the AMC hit show The Walking Dead and found that one of the reasons why the show is so popular, not just because of the zombies, but because they push family value as the hope for the end times. And so that because government, science, and religion have pretty much fallen by the wayside or fallen apart. And this is a redefinition as to how to explain that the show has had so many viewers, over 14 million per episode. And at the end of the day, to the people that are on the show, family matters, whether it's blood family or family as a group of people who have adapted together, come together to survive the show and survive the end times that they've got going on. And it's been a very much a salvation for this show. It's going into its going into its 6th season. It is the most watched cable television show out there, and they are actually going off onto a second show too. There is a break off on the second show, and from what I've seen with the previews, with the Fear the Walking Dead, which is the other show that is going to be opening in August on the same station, family seems to matter there as well. So religion falls by the wayside, government is gone, and science is gone. Science can't seem to do anything for them. Even though there are a few holdouts in the show, we've seen pastors come and go. There is one at the moment who's questioning his faith and finds that he can still comfort people, even though what is happening in the world seems to be the exact opposite of his belief system. He's finding that there are still people that need that comforting and that community through some kind of belief system. And that one would be a belief in God, whether or not he believes in what was written in the book anymore that he was preaching from, which was the Bible. He's finding that he's questioned his own faith. He's gone through his own doubts and everything. Yes, I am a watcher of this show. And, okay, so we're moving on from that into the next piece. And the next piece is from the Science Daily, and they're saying that hallucinations and delusions are more common than thought. Okay, it's 5% of the people they're thinking is at some point in their life is hearing voices and seeing things that other people cannot see. And the thing is they're finding that this 5%, and this is out of a study involving more than 31,000 people. That's a big study. 31,000 people in 19 countries that they used to think that only people with psychosis heard voices and had delusions. But now that we are finding that otherwise healthy, high-functioning people are reporting these experiences. They're not saying that it's supernatural. They're not saying that it's paranormal. This is a scientific version of what their findings are. So of those who have experiences, only 1/3 of them one had it once, or the other third only had it 2 to 5 episodes in their lifetime. And these people seem to function reasonably well. In other words, they're normal. They're normal people. So it's incredibly interesting that not only hearing voices is more common than previously thought, it's always linked. It's not always linked to serious mental illness. Like previously, if you heard voices and stuff, they would lock you up in a sanitarium, or think that you have some psychological problem. Over the years, they're finding that when they're doing the mental health interviews now, that a lot of the general population is having at least 1 to 5 episodes, and they are not seeking mental health assistance. The study found that auditory hallucinations are more common in women than men. Of course, everything is more common in women than men. It's like every study that we've been looking at, it's been more common in women than men. And they are also more common in people from wealthier countries. Not from the poor countries, but from the wealthier countries. Findings are the findings could help generate new research and causes of these isolated symptoms. Well, good luck at repeating those scientifically. We've talked about that in the last couple of weeks, that science is having a really hard time repeating things, especially if they turn out to be spiritual. A spiritual person could explain those things. A person who's a medium could explain those things. A person who's had a loved one and it's their voice that they've been hearing, they have their own explanation as to where that is. But they're interested in learning why some people recover from hearing voices, while others may progress into more serious disorders such as schizophrenia. And they understand that it's temporary for some and permanent for others, and that they're trying to identify whether the mechanisms causing these hallucinations are the same or different in both situations. We need to rethink the link between hearing voices and mental health. Okay, and it says here there's that people should be reassured there's not anything necessarily wrong with them if it happens once or twice. But if people have it on a regular basis, they recommend that you seek some help. Okay, so yeah, let's talk to all the mediums out there and people who have regular visits from their loved ones from beyond the grave. See if they agree with that. Okay. It's not that I'm saying that mental health should not be taken care of. It should. And we're going to look at some of the things tonight in the study of spirituality as to hearing voices and other things. Okay? So why finding your peace means less suffering for others. This is the next news piece. When you are unhappy, you make people around you unhappy. Okay, when you're angry, it increases the suffering in the world. So when you have pain and you project on other people and blame other people for their pain, for your pain and other people's pain, and tell them it's unfair to me, it's your fault, you're making me unhappy. And what it is it's spreading suffering to another person or a group of people. And when we find our peace, as we do in meditation, meditation's just one way of finding our peace, then it means one less person, and probably a whole group of people, if you are one of those people who likes to spread your misery around, um, it is less people who are causing suffering to other people, including yourself. Sometimes you tend to include suffering not only to others, but you tend to pick at yourself. You have the negative thought going, where you're not good enough, or you are not smart enough, you're not wealthy enough, whatever it is. Okay, you cause yourself to suffer. Overthinking causes you to suffer also. So when we quiet the mind, when we find a way to distract the mind, we try and find our peace, we try and find our happiness. When we are loved, the example is when you're in love and you're with somebody you love, and you see that it's raining outside, and you take the person that you love and you go out and you dance in the rain, and you have fun in the rain, and you celebrate and you sing, and it's a time of happiness. It's a time of peace. It's a time of spreading that happiness. But if you are being Mr. Grumpy or Miss Grumpy, and you're not happy about things, and you open that door and you use the F word or whatever explicitive, that it's raining. It's nobody's fault, but you're angry about the fact that it's raining. And it's like, oh my God, okay, why are we having rain again? And you spread that around. You spread it in your own energy, you spread it in your own mind, and if there are people or animals present, you spread it to them as well. So nowadays, people get on social media. I see it every time we have a storm in the valley. Oh my God, we have a storm coming in. Batten down the hatches. I hate the rain and everything else. And then you see other people out, they take their kid out, they observe in the rain, they dance in the puddles. And so it's like, so finding your own peace and your own joy. And when you find your own peace and your own joy, you spread that peace and joy. And you make less people suffer because of you. Okay, and meditation is used a lot. It equals sanity in an insane world. Okay, it's being quiet, it's focusing or not focusing, it's quieting your mind. And if you can't tell your mind to shut up, which I have that issue sometimes, then it's basically, I start with positive feedback. I start with the positive talk. I start with the talking to my spirits and angel. Yes, I hear voices. And it's just like trying to get the mind to quiet down. It's like my spirits tell me, your mind never shuts up. Well, mine doesn't. It's busy. I don't know why. That's just the way I am. But they know where the off button is. If they want me to hear something, if they want me to receive visions or whatever, they know where the off button is. So it's obvious, and the simplest way to stop aggression is to find your peace, okay? And usually it's by being quiet and telling that reptilian brain. Okay, we have three brains. We have in the back, we have the reptilian, then we have the main brain, and then we have the brain in the front. My throat is, kind of conking out on me today. Was fine before I got on the air. But anyway, so we have these three parts to our brain, and the reptilian brain is the one that is the aggressive brain, and then we have the mammal brain, which is the piece that has the compassion and the knowing and we can bring kindness and kinship and bonding, so everything else can function together. So when you meditate, you go to the mammal brain and to the front lobe of the brain, and meditation basically calms down that reptilian brain and makes it less aggressive. When you make it that less aggressive, then you bring yourself peace, you bring peace to those around you, and you share that. Okay, we have one story today. Hold on. Did not have a problem at all before the show. Anyway, we have one story today, and the story was, I got a phone call, and I was asked last week to come and visit a person. They had some spirits that needed to say some things, and they needed some help counseling these spirits. Well, I was getting ready to leave town for a few days, went up north and spent a few days up in nature, and then came back, and I said, well, we can do this on Monday. And what I did is we set up a time, we went over. And this is a person I've known for over 10 years, and she's a channel, and she's a medium, and she says she's got this spirit that's bothering her. Well, even people who deal with spirits a lot have issues sometimes. She says, well, can you come over and help me with this spirit? It's coming through. It won't pass over. It's having issues, yada, yada, yada. And I said, okay, we'll start and see what's going on. Give me a description of this person. What is their age? What happened? And so I kept asking questions, and she kept relaying back and forth with this spirit that has been bothering her for some time. And it seems that this spirit was a young person, about 13 years old. And when I said, what is this person dressed like? Well, they're dressed, and then she described the dress, she described the blouse, she described the bonnet, and I said, okay, this is from pioneer times. This person was in a dust storm. She's wearing the little button-down shoes that they wore in that time period, and had a parasol, had the lace gloves, and she was asking for a spirit that was supposed to come to her. I said, well, who is this? Who is the spirit that you want to come to her? What's the story? What's the background? So I said, there needs to be a spirit that steps forward to come and claim this child. The grandmother entered into this, and she separated the dust storm that the medium was seeing, and said, this is what was happening. There were no buildings. This was an early period of time, and the granddaughter was being brought to the grandmother because there were some issues, and the issues were that the father was getting caught up in gambling and other things, and the mother decided that she was going to take the child and leave because it was going to be a dangerous situation. And it's because the gentleman, the father, was white, a rambunctious hunter and trapper, and the mother he thought was Hispanic. She was not Hispanic. It turned out she was Native American, but she had been raised in a white home. So the child was a half-breed, and the mother decided she was going to take the child to the grandmother. It was never discussed if the grandmother was from the Indian side or from the father's side, but the child saw the grandmother was not going to pass over with the grandmother. She just wasn't going to do it. She was insisting her mother had to come over and to come and get her. The smell of gun smoke filled the air, and so the father was there. He gave that he died definitely in a gunfight, and he could not take the child over from where he was. Okay, that's fine. The mother, there was the smell of certain types of flowers, and so the mother was not going to. She went back to her original tribe. She was not going to take the child. The child had to go to the grandmother, and the child wasn't having it. So what happened is that another spirit who had been a friend of the mother came through, gave some bracelets, and I think these were Native American bracelets, to the daughter, and the daughter recognized these bracelets and decided that she was going to go ahead and go back with the grandmother. Took a lot of effort to get this child over, to pass over. But it does happen, and sometimes when people who pass souls over have to have a resistant spirit that doesn't want to pass over, but they're lost and they're confused and they're crying or whatever is going on, then we have to go into a spirit counseling. We ask a lot of questions. I brought a lot of the angels into the room. Well, that just scared the crap out of her. So she wanted something she was familiar with. She finally did cross with the grandmother. But yeah, spirit counseling, that's another whole area. I teach that as well. It is one thing to be a medium. It's another to be able to counsel spirit, especially the resistant ones. And usually when there's one, there are many others that pass over at the same time. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started into the subject matter. The subject matter, spirituality. Okay, spirituality. What is spirituality? And the difference between the descriptions, 1851, because that is my oldest dictionary, 1851. It's a second edition Webster's. The difference between the definitions is pretty great. Okay, it's really changed over the years. So to be spiritual is consisting of spirit, not material, incorporeal. Spiritual substance of being. The soul of a man is spiritual. Okay, pertaining to the renewal nature of man, the spiritual life, not fleshly, not material, spiritual sacrifices, pertaining to divine things such as spiritual songs, spiritual court, a court held by a bishop or other ecclesiastical clergy. Okay. That was in 1851. And we're going to go through a little bit in the history when I start talking about spirituality, how it's changed and how it was restricted as to who was considered spiritual and who was not considered spiritual. But anyway, in the modern dictionary, spirituality is the quality or state of being concerned with religion or religious matters. It is the quality of or state of being spiritual, something that in ecclesiastical law belongs to the church or to a cleric. It is a quality or state of being spiritual. And then it goes into other religions. So I guess this was based off of Christian religion. Other religions are Zen, Avatar, Gnosticism, Illuminati, Karma, Cone, Mantra. These are also considered spiritual. But if you look at the English version of it, spirituality, the synonyms for it are the church, the cloth, the first estate, the ministry, the clergy. Okay, so who is spiritual and who is not? So we'll take a look at a little bit at that. And the spirituality, there's no single widely agreed definition. If you're looking at it globally, there's no widely agreed definition of spirituality. When you take a look at surveys that have been done and research that have been done, polls that have been done, the agreement on spirituality is very, very small. Okay, very small. Anyway, the traditional meaning is a process of reformation which aims to recover the original shape of man, the image of God. Okay, the image of God. So it's like we are created in the image of. And we're going to look at somebody else's opinion on that later. It's in my notes, but it's further down the line. But to accomplish this, the reformation is oriented at the original mold, which represents the original shape. Okay, so this is the original shape of God, goddess, divine, such as in Judaism. They have the Torah. That's where you originally go. In Christianity, you have Christ. In Buddhism, you have Buddha. In Islam, you have Muhammad. So you have your orientation, okay, where things are oriented. And that's where the spirituality meaning comes from. Okay, so in each religion, in each representation, the representation of spirituality has been different. In modern times, the emphasis is on a subjective experience. It may denote almost any kind of meaningful activity or blissful experience for spirituality. So what you hear out there nowadays is spirituality is not religious. Okay, you can be religious and have spirituality. You can be spiritual and not be religious. Okay, so there is also the modern spirituality is a blend of humanistic psychology, mystical, esoteric traditions, Eastern religions, and then you have your traditional religions. So spirituality has this wide context, okay, this wide meaning. The term spirit, and we're going to look at the term spirit for a minute because spirituality comes from the word spirit. Spirit means animating or vital principle in man and animals, okay? So the spirit of man, the spirit of animals, if you go, depending on your belief system, it can also go to plants, the earth, the elements, everything else. Okay. Comes from an old French word, esprit, which comes from Latin, spiritus. And spiritus means soul, courage, vigor, breath. Okay? The breath of life, the breath of spirit, to breathe. Alrighty. And so spiritual matters concerning spirit are out of the Old French and the Old Latin. So from spirituality, the term spirituality is derived from Middle French and spiritual, okay, this is Latin, spiritual litumtem, which is also derived from spiritualis. Okay, so the meaning of spirituality comes out of the term spirit. And as we get into classic, medieval, modern periods, before that even though, we have spirituality. Early man had their own spirituality. The Native Americans had their own spirituality, still do, where they include that which is around them. They include the sky, the stars, the moon, the earth. So their spirituality, even when some cultures would kill an animal, they would give thanks to that animal for providing them through their death with a meal or with a hide to clothe the body. They didn't waste anything. Okay, they made tools out of the bones. They used the skin for various things. They even used the muscle for things. So it's just like each period of time has its own spirituality. So bring that up into classical, medieval, and early modern periods where spirituality first began its rise in the word spirituality first began its rise in the 5th century and was only started to be commonly used at the end of the Middle Ages. And it became even more common later by the 15th century. But it was used in the Middle Ages in biblical context. Biblical context. You had a lot of people that were illiterate back then. But you went to the church and you saw the stained glasses in the sculptures and stuff in the churches and the paintings, and this was the explanation of what they believed in. So this was for the people who were illiterate. The clergy and the wealthy could actually read the Bible, so they had to depend on the clergy and those who could read, and the paintings and the stained glass and the sculptures and stuff. So in biblical context, the term means being animated by God, to be driven by the Holy Spirit, as opposed to a life that rejects this influence. So you weren't considered spiritual unless you believed in the system that was in place at the time, and this was biblical, that you were animated by God, created by God, animated by God, the breath of life, blah, 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 driven by the Holy Spirit, which means you've taken it to a higher level, and if you rejected this, you were not spiritual. So if you were not of the belief system, you were not considered spiritual, even though you may have been very spiritual of a different belief system. In the 11th century, this meaning changed, and spirituality began to denote the mental aspect of life, the mental aspect, as opposed to material and sensual aspects. It was the mental. And In the ecological sphere of light, it was light against dark. Okay, light against dark. And we move into the 13th century. Spirituality acquired a social meaning, and a psychological meaning. Socially, it denoted the territory of the clergy. Clergy was very big on trying to keep the territory of the spirituality amongst themselves. If you were the common illiterate man, you were definitely not considered to be spiritual. You were considered to be an ignorant piece of dirt. So it's just that when the clergy decided it belongs to us, it was against temporary possessions, and they were against secular authority. So they did not like to be judged by anybody who was not of the clergy. So the clerical class was against the secular class, and psychologically it denoted the realm of inner life, the purity of motives, affections, intentions, and inner dispositions, and the psychology of the spiritual life and the analysis of feeling. So, and my phone is just making all kinds of noise over here. So anyway, in the 17th and 18th century, the distinction was made between higher and lower forms of spirituality. So now they're going to put you on different levels. They're going to say, oh yeah, you can be spiritual, but you're going to be down at this bottom level because you're not, yada, 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 to this ruling, to the way that we believe in. So a spiritual man is one who's Christian more abundantly and deeper than others. The word is associated with mysticism and quietism. To be quiet, and acquired a negative meaning by them doing this. It acquired a very negative meaning. So we get into the 1800s. Ralph Waldo Emerson was a pioneer. He's also a great author. Was a pioneer of the idea of spirituality as a distinct field. He was one of the major figures of transcendentalism in the early 19th century, and he was a liberal Protestant. And he worked with the liberal Protestant movement, which was rooted in the English and German Romanticism. The biblical criticism, there was biblical criticism going on, and by others and by skeptics. But the transcendentalists emphasized an intuitive, experimental approach to religion. Okay, and that kind of upset a lot of people who like to do things by the book. By the book, you can't do it outside the way that we have it written down. Catholic Church is worse for that. But go on the Vatican website and look up for their list of what you can or cannot believe in. Oh my God, 80 pages long. Anyway, when the Protestants did this, they kind of moved a little further away from other religions, okay? And individuals' intuition of truth, taken as the criterion for truth. I must be truth. I must be truth, okay? And it must be true in other religions as well, okay? So if God loves me, then God would love everybody, whether they were Christian or not. This didn't go over too well with some people. Okay, so after the Second World War, we're getting into the 20th century. After the Second World War, spirituality and religion became disconnected from each other. Okay, there was this big widening gap that was happening, and spirituality became more oriented on a subjective experience. So what you experienced in your for your spirituality, if you experience the divine and the energy of your angels and stuff, that's your spirituality, your closeness to God. But religion was going in another direction. So instead of attempts to place the self within a broader context, a new discourse developed, and which was humanistic. Okay, so psychology entered into it. Mystical and esoteric traditions, Eastern religions, they were all starting to become blended. Before they were all separate. Now they're becoming blended, and they're people that are trying to reach the true self by self-disclosure, by free expression, by meditation. can blame the Beatles for bringing a lot of meditation into the United States. They went off and spent time in India with gurus, and they learned a bunch of things. And then when they came back, their hair was even longer than it was when they first started in their business of being famous and bringing music and the British music to the United States. They went through a period of time where they went to India, and they brought back a lot of this transcendental stuff and this meditation, and it changed the sounds of their music. People ate it up. So it was a blending of the Western and the Eastern religions and the spirituality. So the distinction between spiritual and religious became more common in the popular mind in the late 20th century. Okay, so we have the development of New Age circles called seminar spirituality, and I really don't like seminar spirituality. What I'm speaking of is structured offerings, and you still see them today. These are structured offerings complementing consumer choice with spiritual options. So it's just like, okay, we're going to have a seminar and it's going to be open to the first 2,000 people. And nowadays they do it as webinars, so you can go higher than that depending on how much money they put into a really strong server for a webinar. And what they're going to do is they're going to offer a structured, complementary consumer choice of a spiritual option. Okay, there's one that I was supposed to attend. My calendar isn't here. Online on Thursday. Well, I've got another option, so I'm going to go take the other option instead of the webinar. But something that's totally non-spiritual. I'm going to go see the Minions with a friend. But it's like the seminar is on a specific subject matter. It's either free or you pay for it, or you buy what they end up doing, especially if it's free, you end up buying their stuff. They make their money somehow, okay? And it's a seminar spirituality. It's basically, we need to collect money from you. It's a little different from going to the church and paying a tithing, but then you're purchasing something instead. So I've seen a lot of these seminars over the years. We're going to do the Egyptian metal bars that you hold, and then they grew from being metal to crystal to whatever, and there are these power energy things that they're going to conduct energy through you. If you're sensitive to energy, yes, you'll feel energy, but you can feel energy by picking up 2 rocks out of the dirt, or 2 hands of dirt, or just through standing in the grass. But they're going to do seminar spirituality, and what they're going to do is they're going to make money off you. So because of the declining membership in organized religions, growth of secularism in the Western world has given rise to this broader view of spirituality. There's a lot of people that are just turning away from the churches, and they're looking for something more. So what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at a little bit on some of the traditional faiths. Judaism, they have what is called the Kabbalic spirituality, a set of esoteric teachings that are meant to explain the relationship between the unchanging eternal and the mysterious Ein Sof, which means no end, and the more mortal and the finite universe, the creation. So the relationship between the infinite and the finite, the spiritual, the divine, and those things which are the creation of the divine. Speaking of women's spirituality, and in Judaism, the traditional will separate not the liberal or the conservative, but the traditional, okay? The traditional will separate the men and the women in the church. The women would usually be up in the loft area, the second floor, and they could see down over where the men were doing their praying and stuff. And here's where the women get the better end of the spirituality. The reason why they separate the men and the women in Judaism is because women bear the creation of life. They are already closer to God, according to the religion. So they put the women up in a higher area. They put the women up in the higher area. They don't have to try as hard as men to get close to God because they already are, okay, according to the belief system. The men have to go to the temple, they have to study, they have to pray, they have to do everything they can to be closer to God. They don't have that elevation of being closer to God, being part of the spirituality of God. The men have to try harder. So, just a little side thing, where the women actually come out on top, literally. And the woman is also the head of the household. So anything that has to do with spirituality or ritual or anything in the household is done by the woman. If it's out in public or at the temple, it's done by the men because they have to try harder. Anyway, Catholic spirituality is the spiritual practice of living out a personal act of faith, following the acceptance of faith, which means they have to accept the faith in the Catholic Church. Then there is a unique way of approaching spirituality. So it depends on which form of Catholicism that you are going under, because there are actually more than one. People don't talk about it a whole lot, but it has its own way of approaching God in prayer and living it out in the gospel. Christian mysticism refers to the development of mystical practice and theory within Christianity. Which has been connected to mystical theology, especially in Catholic and Eastern Orthodox. The two are different. Okay, the attributes, which means the Christian mysticism is studied and practiced, are varied from aesthetic visions of the soul's mystical union with God to simple prayer and contemplation of the Holy Scripture. So their versions of spirituality can vary very greatly. Progressive Christianity, as a contemporary movement, seeks to remove supernatural claims of the faith and replace them with post-critical understanding of biblical spirituality. So you've got it going both ways, and it depends on which, because Christianity just is, there are so many different breakoffs of Christianity. Started with Martin Luther and Lutheranism from the Catholic Church, and then all these breakoffs. If they had one little argument on one little point, the Christianity just broke off again. You wonder why there's so many versions of Christianity, because they had a little argument and they split off and did their own thing. So you even have split-offs today that take and pull the spirituality right out of it, and if it's not by the book, then it's not spiritual. And it goes all the way totally into the opposite direction. Like I said, just depends on which version of Christianity you're going with. Islam, they have the 5 pillars, and with the 5 pillars, they have their creed, they have their prayers, they have their almsgiving, the giving of alms to the poor, which is giving money to the poor, or food, or whatever it is that they're doing at that time, the fasting period, the pilgrimage to Mecca. Those are their 5 pillars, and to lead to their spirituality. They have to do those things. And you're expected to do the pilgrimage at least once in your lifetime. I don't know what they say about people who are unable to do so, but it's supposed to be a great thing for them to do it at least once. Okay, Buddhism. Buddhism practices developing or cultivating or producing, in a sense, a calling into existence. A calling into existence. So their path is a bit different, and they have their own ways of doing it. They have, and it's a very peaceful religion. If you look at the history, though, going back, there was a lot more to it. Take a good look at reading Buddha's actual history, where he came from and what he went through before he became who he was, actual human being. So Hinduism, no traditional ecclesiastical order, no centralized religious authority, no governing body, no prophet, no binding holy book. This is Hinduism. They don't have all that organizational crap. Okay? They can choose to be either polytheistic, pantheistic, monotheistic, or atheistic. That's a wide range, and they can still be spiritual. And they have an open structure. Spirituality in Hindu philosophy is an individual experience. It defines spiritual practice as one's journey and towards the awareness of self, the discovery of higher truths, the true nature of reality, and the consciousness that is being liberated and content. Wow, Eastern religion. Eastern religion. No wonder a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon when this was brought over to the Western world, because here we are having all these religions that just tie you down and tell you exactly what to do, basically how to move, breathe, everything, or condemn you for being of a lower class, and because of that you cannot be spiritual, and it's only for the priests or whatever. Here we have another religion that has none of that, allows you to take on any type of belief system that you want to, and they have their own gods and goddesses and their stories and stuff, but it's nothing that's going to bind you down or condemn you. And no wonder people jump on the bandwagon with this one. Okay, so Hinduism has the 4 paths, and it is a path of yoga, which is a spiritual practice, and yoga means discipline. So you come up with your own discipline. You have your own spiritual practice. You bring knowledge. You learn. That's knowledge. That's one of the ways. The second way is devotion. The devotion, have the devotion to what you're doing. The way of works. And the 4th way is contemplation and meditation. So in the spiritual practice, sometimes it involves deity or deities. It may include chanting, singing, dancing, music, mantras, kirtans, and it may be in front of an idol. It may be one or more deity. It may be it may be just out on a beach and just doing it, with no idol or anything. It's a devotional symbol of holy. The path of one's work is your karma. Path of one's work is your karma. And where you have a diligent practical work or a profession, that becomes your spiritual practice. So it's how you work in your daily life, and you perfect it to a form of spiritual liberation. It's not about material reward. In this country, you work, you get rewarded with a paycheck. And you live from paycheck to paycheck. And you work to live instead of live to work. And so this is the opposite in Hinduism. You live to work. It becomes your spiritual practice, not your means of survival. Then there's the practice of cultivating necessary virtues, self-discipline, meditation, contemplation, self-reflection, and sometimes with isolation or renunciation of the world. So being of the world but not in it, or being in the world or not of it. So brief note on African spirituality. Spirituality is considered to be a belief system that guides the welfare of society and the people within, eradicates the sources of unhappiness occasioned by evil, period. Of course, then there's a lot of other things that have arisen from that, combining that with the different religions that came into that area. So over the centuries. So there was a poll done in 2005. About 24% of the United States population identifies itself as spiritual, not religious. Spiritual, but not religious. And it means that the deepest values and meanings by which people live embraces the idea of ultimate or alleged immaterial reality. Envisions an inner path enabling a person to discover the essence of his or her being. and it embraces transcendental ideas. And secular spirituality emphasizes humanistic ideas on moral character, such as love, compassion, patience, tolerance, forgiveness, contentment, responsibility, harmony, and concern for others, which means that you don't have to believe in a divine being to be a spiritual person. You can be an atheist and still be a very good person, and you have all of these qualities. So they're saying that there doesn't have to be a supernatural reality or divine being. Okay, and it's still a spiritual practice. They don't call it that, but it's what we would observe it to be. So Aristotle, this is the gentleman I said I would come back to. That was deep in my notes. Aristotle was one of the first known Western thinkers to demonstrate that morality, virtue, and goodness could be derived without appealing to a supernatural force. This is a long, long time ago. Okay, he even argued that men create gods in their own image, not the other way around. Not the other way around. Whereas religion says God created man in His image. It's men create gods in their own image. Now, if you take a look at the gods and goddesses and all the deities and stuff, you're going to see such varied images, to some very scary ones that come out of the Eastern countries, which, even though they are very, very scary looking, there is a reason for them. They are protectors. They are guardians. They are the causes of change and everything. So they're actually good guys. But the Western people would look at it and go, oh my God, no. And then turn around and worship somebody who's been tortured and crucified. So it's a matter of where is your belief? What is the story behind it? And there are also those who just toss all of that and say, hey, I'm a good person. I'm a spiritual person. I just don't need the rest of that. Okay, so although personal well-being, both physical and psychological, is an important aspect of modern spirituality, it does not imply spirituality is essential to achieving happiness. So atheists reject the notions that non-material is important to living well and can be just as happy as more spiritual-oriented individuals. Okay, so anyway, and I'm going to skip to, because of time constraints, we're going to skip out of into other things and go into the qualities of spiritual life. Qualities of spiritual life. What are they? Okay, life is more than matter. Okay, so we are looking past the matter. We are looking into things that do matter. Okay, so matter, the physical matter, into things that do matter into the life. If things did not matter to us, we would not need comfort. Okay. Matter doesn't feel comfort or discomfort, beauty or ugliness. And we're talking about solid matter. Okay? It's like, here is this bottle of water. It doesn't care. Okay? It doesn't care if something's beautiful or ugly, if there's love or compassion, joy or sorrow. The chair that you're sitting in doesn't matter. It doesn't get sorry, and it doesn't get happy. No matter what does. These are finer values. So these belong to the realm of spirit, not physical matter. These are of the realm of spirit. But life is also more than spirit. Okay? If it were just spirit, there would be no need for water, food, rest. Human life is a combination of both matter and spirit. So the nature of spirit experiences and expresses its values. The values are feelings and emotions, and they cannot be captured totally in words or intellect. The goal of spiritual path is to understand the spiritual dimension of life fully and with all its values that spirit represents. What are they? They're peace, joy, love, beauty, unlimited knowledge, capacity to understand both mind and matter. Okay? So comfort is the quality of your consciousness. the quality of your consciousness. Does it comfort you? Okay? Is it to some degree dependent? Is the matter part of you some degree dependent on comfort? Okay? The true nature of spirit is a comprehension, to understand. And our spirit needs to understand things through us, through our physical being. And the consciousness is knowledge. We want to learn. We are conscious beings. We learn by just existing. We have the thirst for knowledge of other things. And this is also a piece of spirituality. The effects of the spiritual dimension on society, to be able to belong, to be responsible, to have compassion and caring for the whole of humanity. The spiritual dimension is what it is in its true form, okay? And that goes past caste, creed, religion, nationality. Wars would be eliminated if there were spiritual understanding. And when you are on a spiritual path, it's not to escape responsibility. It's to be responsible. The spiritual path is not to escape hard work, because spirituality is work, okay? Is work. Knowing peace through meditation. We talked about this earlier. Knowing this, having a sense of sacredness. What is sacred to you? What is sacred to you? Sometimes your peace of mind is very, very sacred. Sometimes it's other things. And being able to have that sense, to have service, to give service, but also to have a period of silence as well, to have confidence and the nature of doubt. We will see you next week. Thank you for coming and listening today. And if you have any questions, you can go to www.sanctuaryofsacredspace.com or look for me on Facebook.